Today's video is about making Ayame a wig and some eyes. Unfortunately, Ayame has apparently a really unique hair color, and I've been unable to find any wigs online for sale that's in the right color. So yeah, completely by luck I found a party wig that's the right hair color. So I pretty much tore that apart, and I'm going to be using the wefts for a wig for Ayame. I preferred sewn wigs and not glued wigs, so I'm going to try that. Naturally, the first step is going to be making a wig cap. I use the leftover fabric from the original wig, and I use a pattern I found online with some modifications that I'm going to be using to make her wig. So I sew the pieces together. So after sewing the pieces together, I'm going to add a piece of elastic that can fit snugly around Ayame's head with a zigzag stitch to my wig cap. I pin the elastic in around the seams and stretch it a bit so that I can more or less get the right amount of stretch everywhere. And when I'm sewing, I stretch the elastic out, and like I said, I use a zigzag stitch to sew. And yeah, after sewing the elastic, I start sewing my first weft. I use a zigzag stitch again and sew it on top of my elastic while stretching my elastic out. This way my elastic is going to remain stretchy, and the weft is going to sit nice and snug. After sewing the first weft around the edge, I start sewing the second weft, going in a spiraling motion towards the top. I later started hand sewing because it was getting a bit difficult to sew neatly, and my wig cap fabric kept folding, so yeah, there wasn't much room for sewing nicely, so I switched to hand sewing. And I sew it all the way to the top, leaving a small circular gap, making the wefts tighter in the front where her bangs are going to be, and a bit more spaced out at the back where the hair is going to be long. So after I finish off my wefts and I have the small space left, I take another weft and roll it up. And after rolling it up, I stitch that piece together so that I have a single piece of rolled up weft, and then I'm going to stitch that onto the circular open bit at the top of the wig. And in this way, our wig is pretty much done. After I stitch the rolled up piece to the wig, I'm going to use boiling water to make it lay flat. Well, I put the entire wig on a rubber bowl that's around the size of Ayame's head, and then poured boiling water over the top to flatten out pretty much most of the wig. But just know that the boiling water is definitely going to damage the elastic, so use it with caution. Try to keep it away from the elastic. And yeah, so next step is very much styling. I put the wig on the doll's head and section of the bangs, and I make a blunt cut a bit lower than I want the wig, and then slowly I make snips towards the top of the wig or along the grain of the wig to shorten it until I'm happy with it. So just know I am terrible at styling wigs. I'm not the best person to follow, but this is what I did. So after the bangs or a fringe or whatever you want to call it, I'm going to curl the hair. So I'm taking a lock of hair, wrapping it around a plastic straw and using bobby pins and pinning it on both sides. On one side of the head, I turn the curls in one way and the other side of her head the other way. Not that it matters that much in the grand scheme of things, since my curls aren't going to be tight, but yeah, I wanted to do it. After putting all the hair in the curling stuff, I pour boiling water and then cold water only over the curls. I try to alternate between boiling and cold water a few times, being careful not to let the boiling water go over my elastic. And after that, I just take out the bobby pins and the straws, and we're almost done. And then I use my fingers to separate some of the curls, and then I use a comb to brush through it. I'm going for a wavy, ishy, curly, ishy something style, and I think I kinda did it, although it looks a bit like a fluffy mess, but that's kinda what I was trying to go for. Anyway, now we have a problem because the bangs are sticking up into the air. Now if this wasn't elastic or a sewn wig and I didn't have to mind my elastic, I would have just poured boiling water over the doll's head while I had a rubber band around the head. And if it wasn't a resin doll with elastic, that can get wet and moldy and stuff. So I'm going to use another method. I'm going to wrap my doll's head in toilet paper or any other type of paper, preferably one that isn't as porous, and then put the wig on, and then I'm going to use my water glue to pretty much glue the fringe or the bangs onto that paper so that it can pretty much keep the shape around the head. And then to keep it in place, I use a bit more toilet paper. Now, the reason why I use paper or something porous is that this glue does not really want to dry if it's sandwiched between plastic or touching plastic, despite the hair itself being plastic and drying just fine. I'm not quite sure what's going on with that, but yeah, if your paper gets stuck to the wig, you can literally just dab your finger in water and wipe it off. And yeah, this glue comes off with water so easily. So you also technically don't have to add the paper on the head, because it's definitely, since the glue comes off with water so easily, it's definitely not going to be doing anything to the face up, but I'd like to err on the side of caution. And that's the wig pretty much done. So next up, her eyes. I did make eyes beforehand, but she has very defined eye wells inside her head, which were too small for the eyes I made. So with the eye bases I bought along with her head, I decided to make some eyes. I start with painting inside the eye bases a bright neon green color. And then I take my clear cap pieces, or whatever you want to call them, and I paint in my pupils. I did try to draw a guide for where the center is, but that didn't help much. So pretty much you have to paint it, turn it around, see where it's messed up, scrape off a bit or paint a bit, whatever, until you get your pupil the right size. After painting the pupil, I go in to the eye bases again with a dark green color, making lines from the outer edges toward the center, trying to make it look a bit more realistic, as well as darkening the center of the eye bases. Next, I have this shiny green shimmer powder. I'm going to mix that up with some gloss and then paint them into the eye bases. I'm trying to keep it thin so that my original color and texture comes through, although it didn't come through as much as I have liked, but the eyes turned out really pretty. And after painting the shimmer, I add the caps or the clear part to the eye bases, and the eyes are done. So then we'll pop them into the head and pop the wig on, and we'll see how Ayame looks in the end. Thanks for watching. I hope this was a fun little experience, watching me mess up making wigs and eyes and whatnot. And although I think my wig turned out pretty well for my first try, it's a bit unfortunate that the original wig had the wefts stitched together with white thread, so that sticks out. I'm not sure what's the safest way to hide that. And the eyes are teeny tiny bit wonky, but only if you know they are, thankfully. And I think they turned out pretty nice. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned for the next video. Bye!